gonna be out front, a person could say, hey, I had this happen, this is how I know this guy, or whatever. If you have it out front, and then people can say, I don't mind, I know you're gonna be a fair, impartial
But that isn't the way you wrote this, because later on you made it if there is any disclosure of anything, they have to recuse themselves. That's the way you wrote it. And another place that's a problem, I'll give you, this one is a good one. Your particularized injury. Under the definition of this, the way you wrote it,
comes from,
like I don't care where it came from. Under the definition, the way you wrote it, I'll give you a very particular example. The Clifton Wind, what do they call themselves?
Task Force on Wind.
The Task Force on Wind has, it wouldn't directly affect their property. It wouldn't directly,
unless you guys and wanted to add some other category. This is what comes from.
This would say, no, you can't. Individuals in that could, but they couldn't. That's what the thing I hate about people trying to make such an exact description of everything. Because you get into these situations where we want to let somebody be a participant, but this gives exact criteria.
Because
no
some
exceptions.
things are prohibited doesn't mean that you can't do other things.
Take that to court.
You know, personal
The ordinance
relationship.
says this. Somebody could take that and say, you couldn't let them be a participate. The ordinance says that they don't fit the criteria. Well, we left it so we could.
So you're disagreeing with me? You think that I'm not gonna. I'm not saying that I would go to the protest anything that you wanted to change in there. I'm not saying that because.
I think what Eric said earlier is appropriate, that this is a matter that should be initiated and crafted by the select board, and then we would rubber stamp it just so that all other boards, including the appeals board.
And not just rubber stamp it, but I would, if they asked us to review it and not, I mean, I would be interested if they were, I would hope that they would actually pass it down to us and not just say that we did this, now we just want you to approve it. I would hope that they would send it down to us and say, we'd like you to review it and make comments and stuff like that. That's what I would hope, because I don't want to be in the business of rubber stamping each other's stuff. So, to me, it would be good if they did it. That's what I think. What do you think, Dave?
Well, most organizations have an ethics officer, and presumably the one that would be the town might be the town attorney. So if there was an ethics issue, it could be written into the policy that individual could make a judgment, because there gets some very legal, there's court cases and all these other things, and I think that might get into a thing where if someone, say on the planning board, may have a conflict of interest or a perceived conflict of interest, that would be, first of all, planning board could vote on it. First of all, you want to encourage disclosure. That's the first thing you want to do. You don't want the penalty to be so harsh that people try to conceal it. You want to have it where, look, here's the situation. Just like a laptop, although that's a very minor thing. I used to work for Hewlett Packard. I talk about Hewlett Packard laptops, okay? But you want to have a policy that encourages that, a townwide policy made where it's consistent, whether it's planning board, appeals board, employees of the town or whatever, that it's consistent and it encourages people to report it. And then you have a process. If the person doesn't on their own initiative recuse themselves, because there may be a problem, 3 people on the planning board have a personal relationship with someone, then you don't have a quorum.
Right.
But you need to have a process to adjudicate that, and that might be something where if one of us had an issue that it may or may not be, none of us are lawyers, or at least I don't think we are, and but you disclose it, and then maybe the planning board could vote on it, yes, we think, or maybe kick it up to the select board, and as a board or appeal last resort, contact the town attorney. I assume he's on permanent retainer. I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah, he is.
But he could get a billable hour out of it by determining that Eric or Dave or Bruce or Jerry, whatever, you know, this is okay or it's not. The fact of the matter is, and I agree with Paul on this, it's on the table. You know, you want to get it on the table and let the process then run.
Right, my problem with this is it is so picky and
I agree.
restrictive.
I have some of the same issues there.
The communication about all parties present, the way this is written, if somebody is a party to it and they don't show up at meetings or just ignore being notified, they can bring things to a total halt.
I mean, there's so much information out there. The planning board manual has
A good section on it.
has a good section on it. There's case law. There's I think there's so much other information out there for us to try to.
Yeah, and I don't
Yeah.
think it belongs just in our us. I agree with Eric that I think it should go to the selectmen and they should look at it on a
It should be
town-wide
town-wide.
basis.
You can't have a separate set of ethics for selectmen versus planning board. We're all city officials or whatever, and they should all be the same set of rules. So in that sense, I think there should be a town-wide, but there should be a process for adjudicating if there is. You want to encourage people to report it. You don't want to make it so draconian that
It doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
That's what I thought the two weakest sections in what I had written up with. The last two, I wasn't particularly happy with the way those last two sections came out. I'm not sure what I wanted to say or how to say it. So those, I do agree that those are the two weakest that I didn't have. And I'll just throw this at you. If it's a municipal officer policy, if it's done by the select board, they can undo it at will. If it's an adopted ordinance by the town, then it has to go through a process.
Well, right, well then, what I would, if you want to go to that extent on it, then what you should be going for as far as your public input should be that the town should have an ethics ordinance, okay? But that again has really, it doesn't change the way the planning board believes. I think we have consensus here that the town should have, however it's done, whether it's a town ethics policy or town ethics ordinance or whatever, it should be one uniform program, whatever umbrella it comes under, it should cover everybody. And it can be up to the people and the select board to make the decision on whether it should be a policy or an ordinance or whatever. That's not, again, that's not something of planning board would be adjudicating.
The problem with making it
Page
an
9 in
ordinance.
that ethics ordinance, there was or ethics policy, page 9 was the definition of what personal relationship and who.
The problem with making it an ordinance is it then is extremely difficult to change if there's been a mistake made.
But that's the name of the
Yeah,
game.
but at the same time, anyone that disagrees, if the selectmen were to change the policy based on the fact that they decided something should be added or should not,
Yeah.
no one is stopped from taking it to court if they feel that strongly that it's been done wrong.
I'll say it to you. Imagine the worst board you can imagine. You know, that's what you have to do to say, okay, what?
If you've got the worst board you can imagine at the select board level, then it isn't going to make much difference whether you've got an ordinance or not.
Well, again, Paul, we're not saying there shouldn't be an ethics thing in town. That's not the argument. You know, and just it should be the content, and it should be town-wide. So I think, you know, we're going to post on the website that you made the presentation. I'm going to take your documents and post them up there, you know, that you presented. And I'm going to indicate that this other document that is from the town is also up there, that we talked about that. And I'm going to indicate that the board's consensus was that the town should have a process and should be looked at town-wide, and that there also should be some sort of adjudication procedure associated, you know, with the ethics program for the community.
Yeah, you don't know what the origin of that one that we had from 2005. I don't remember either. No.
don't know.
So I wanted to research to see where, you know, if it had any,
I think the Maine Attorney General's office has some kind of a statewide ethics ordinance, or not ordinance, but a statewide policy for
Yeah.
all state employees, and I'm not sure
yeah. I saw something like that and it was kind of too much toward employees getting, you know, getting canned without reason or without cause and stuff like that, stuff that we didn't really, I don't think that applied to us too much, but I thank you for your time.
Yep, well, thanks for coming in and doing that. I'm gonna bring this up so you can look at it while we do it. Can I get the what cord? Another minute.
Paul, I think most of this came from right through the state statute. This ethics policy is what about. I think most of that came through right off the state.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
I couldn't remember where we,
Come on.
Yes, it is.
Is it in there? There it goes. No, I can't see it. That's all right. I got it. Zoom button on this thing.
this is a good test of our, what's
Yeah.
our projector we use.
Yeah, well, this is as big as it can get, I think. And right, so basically all I did is I renumbered it. So you can see how I renumbered it. This is Ubuntu, so, and I don't really use it that much. That's why partially some of the issues with this machine, I use 3 different operating systems. This is the one I use the least. So anyway, I didn't change any of the definitions at all in this for purposes of our discussion. So that's what we're here to talk about tonight. So
What are the deleted comments you mean on the right?
deleted were like, I deleted like, say if it said like A or 1 or 2 or whatever, those are like just deleted like little, so if you see it on there, it's just like deleted like the number. Because we renumbered, before there were A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
This is now, it's like 1, 2, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. You know, so those are all I deleted. And the only thing that I actually, you know, in the Microsoft Word, the only thing I accepted were the formats. And I didn't accept any of the, even the commas and the periods and stuff like that that changed. And I didn't accept any of those changes. I only accepted the format changes. Because it's just, if you leave the format changes on there, you won't ever be able to see what text got changed.
Yeah.
So anyway, with the accessory residential unit, that, see if you still like that.
My one question with this is we have accessory resident, we use the words residential, dwelling, and residence, all in different places in here. Is there a need to have all three terms? For instance, when you go lower, you're gonna find you've got dwelling, multi-dwelling, and then you've got multi-residential. Do we really want the confusion of using all of them?
But if you go back to the top, they say the word dwelling includes the word residence.
Right.
I mean,
But then we
Also have
also,
occupied structures too.
yeah, so you end up, you've got like about 4 different things that refer to, what do we want to call
Which
it?
we know has created havoc.
It's made it difficult sometimes, I think. I wish we would shorten the list down to just a couple of terms, and then maybe at the beginning saying that term includes.
Right.
So on 18.5, we've got a whole paragraph on 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 descriptions of dwellings.
Right.
So maybe we need to just. Right.
So you've got another dwelling. And then if you get down to residential, you run into another whole set, and they're just subtly different. And I think we should be.
Yeah. So I guess we have to decide whether we want to have.
Dwelling units or residential units?
I don't know which one's more common.
Well, whatever we come up with, we know that there are certain definitions that we'll have to apply to it. You know, I like residential use, but I think that it's, you have to look at it as being habitable.
Right, and what would happen then is you would, instead of saying dwelling, you'd say residence, then residential unit, residential single-family detached, residential two-family. So the question is, do you want to eliminate the word dwelling, residential, somehow combine them?
The other thing is, I mean, if you're going to have some sort of living spaces, you know, sometimes the living spaces are in hotel rooms, or you know, they could be in a bed and breakfast. How do we want to define that? I mean, and then, you know, these spaces, you know, I think that's where we got occupied space before, from commercial space. You know, I mean, I don't know if we're going to have like one word that describes all places that human beings occupy. So we do have to allow for that, but I do agree that, you know, having residential and also dwelling, that's very confusing. And then breaking dwelling into so many different pieces, that doesn't seem realistic either.
Well, if you come down to residential, that's broken into several pieces as well. That's where I thought there's a duplication here.
Where's the residential section, Bruce?
Oh, Pt2.
I got 18, 15.
Okay, when you get, 1814 stats with residents. And then you go on 1815 says residential dwelling unit. And then somewhere there was multifamily, was that back under M?
I like the description of residence, so.
Yes, it is, it's on
It's a good
1811 Bruce.
Yeah, 1811 has also got multi-unit residential. And I like the way, one way it was done under dwelling, where it said dwelling and then put the descriptors afterwards. Now, you could do the same thing with residential. But what you have right now with this residential thing is you've got 2 or 3 things spread out over the ordinance.
So what's the difference between a dwelling and a residence?
Well, that's just it. I haven't figured that out, Hadley. They're pretty much
We should
have the same.
meld them together.
They do that in the general terminology.
Can I ask a
If you
question?
read
Go
it-
ahead.
The state plumbing code might clear up the definitions pretty simply.
Well, that's true. I mean, actually, I did look at that one time, a couple of years ago.
Maybe that's what we should look at. And maybe it's not possible, but either way, I would still take at least the multi-unit residential, and I would go residential, multi-unit, and stick it down with residents.
Would you think, I mean, as we're looking at this, it is confusing though, because what would you, if you were applying and looking through the ordinance, do you come to the board with, on the dwelling or on the residence? And there actually is a residential dwelling unit. Which, you know what, they should have this identical identification. I mean, group of rooms, design.
Well, compare dwelling multifamily with multi-unit.
You know, I'm looking at both of them, flipping back and forth, and they are almost identical. The dwelling unit and a residential dwelling unit. The descriptions below.
So,
Or you could take multi-use, okay.
They're identical.
Or if you wanted to keep that in there as multi-unit residential, you could simply say C dwelling.
no, one of the things that would have to be done, you know, if we delete these definitions, which I'm in favor of making like a singular definition so that it's easier to understand. We do have to go through all the different little sections to talk about, you know, we talk about subdivisions and cluster development and all that stuff, and make sure however we word it so that it matches the words in the definitions.
Right, and the biggest one to check is going to be shoreline zoning, which I did not do ahead of time, because that's the one you'll have the biggest hassle probably if you make any changes to.
Yeah.
Not that we would have a problem, but the state.
Dwelling unit. Any structure or portion of a structure, permanent or temporary in nature, used or proposed to be used as a residence seasonally or throughout the year. So now, that's a dwelling, so let's go see if we can find out what a residence is. Residence. This is why I didn't do it. Now it's coming back to me. This is why I didn't go back to this, okay? Because under residence, I remember this now, it says go back and look at dwelling unit. And under dwelling unit, it uses residence as one of its definitions, and that's why I didn't do it before. Now,
Sounds like a can.
yeah, now I'm remembering. Right. That's why I looked at it before, because and they never corrected it. So it's not really that useful for us, except for if you like that dwelling definition, because it just sends you back. It's a circular reference.
Yeah,
It's nothing.
that's why it's like,
They use them interchangeably, and they told you that here in the general terminology, that they're one and the same. I mean, it may be confusing, but it's.
Okay. So, would you rather stick with, do you like dwellings better, or do you like residences better?
somebody else feel.
I like residence better. I take out the word dwelling in all dwelling descriptions, you know, and change it to residence. And just like that, you have a residence unit, residence single family, detached, residence two family, residence multifamily, residence seasonal.
One thing I might add in there, just because of what we just saw in the plumbing code, I might make another line entry in there that says something like, a residence is the same, the same as a dwelling in the main state plumbing code.
Yeah, as long as you cover it somewhere, and you can put that in that beginning, what did you call it, what was that section? The general terminology. You can just make sure that the word dwelling was, basically you change it from, looking at 18.1.1.6, you could say the word residence includes the word dwelling.
Oh, I see what you're saying, right, so you use occupied like that.
In any state ordinance or anything else that it comes up.
That says it right there, the word dwelling includes,
Right, but if we're gonna make residence the way we're looking at it, we wanna switch the order on that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And then put it all,
Yeah.
I always just found that confusing because you've got, and then now that also makes more sense because you have an accessory residential unit.
Yeah. Okay, so then, in that case then, do we want to change this, it says a second dwelling unit.
A second residential unit.
Yeah, then you're using the definition to define, you're using the word to define a definition.
And you have to take dwelling out and whole lot.
Well, no, because you're defining residence later on, and that's where. Accessory residential unit, say a second residence unit. And then you're going to say residence later on.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Because what you're defining is the accessory.
Yeah, you're
not
right. Let's just leave it alone then. All right. Let's go down to accessory structure or use then.
That one I think you have to leave there.
Yeah.
Because structures would include, and when we get down to structure, you see that includes anything that isn't technically a building
Right.
or.
That's what I think is going to happen with a lot of these. A lot of these are going to be the same. Adjacent grade. I can't think of when it was used though.
Well, there's a whole bunch of definitions here. I'm not sure if they appear anywhere in it, except that they may be somewhere in the floodplain or.
How about if I go through, that's actually a good point. How about if I go through, we'll look at these, a couple of these that just sound, like fairly unusual, like adjacent grade is like a fairly unusual term. Yeah, I'll go through and try to find all of the words. I'll go through the ordinances, the sections. I'll set out my computer at home, somehow I'll go through and search a set of documents and look for the words adjacent grade. And the only place it appears is the definitions, we'll probably go for deleting it. Because there's no point in having a definition for something that you don't regulate.
Yeah, just adds length to the ordinance.
In your program, can you have the whole ordinance, can you do a search and then it'll highlight every
Have to
resident?
do it by,
I think
have to do it by
I
section.
I know, but I think in my Apple computer at home, I think I can go and have it search for the words in a folder. I think so.
Would that, in the shoreline management aspect, would that be something that would turn up there?
The grade.
Well, that's what we're
thinking of. It's either going to be, if it shows up someplace, it will, that exact term, adjacent grade.
I can see like in Hopkins
Well, it
Pond,
came
that's
up,
a pretty
it came up
steep
when Brian
lot.
and I went out to look at that place on Springy Pond.
So maybe it does appear in the shoreline.
Yeah, shoreline, I think might be,
Okay. So it's going to be the shoreline or the flood ordinance.
They're the most likely.
Fred has a little experience in this adjacent grade.
Aggrieved party, I don't know, I think that probably appears in the appeals portion.
Probably. I mean, a lot of these I've got no problem with, as far as,
Good description.
Agriculture,
yeah.
alteration. I think the area of flood hazard stuff, that's gonna be where we have to go through and assign the correct numbers to it.
Right. Yeah, I'm not worrying a whole lot about some of these numbers yet, because we're just gonna have to wait till after we're all done and then,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, and that's why I didn't spend any time on it. Okay, this next section,
Right there, automobile right there,
I think it,
that's just state.
right out of the state law.
Yeah.
The next one is different,
which one are you looking at?
automobile
Only
recycling.
graveyards.
Oh, yes, yeah. I don't see any
And
problem.
a lot of these definitions, I think, we might be, I don't know, very clear. What are the definitions here? So, the question I have is down here under building. I mean, how is this,
Different than.
Well, that would apply to, okay, for instance, when you had the lumber mill out here, barns, storage buildings. I don't think you can take the building out.
okay, what about later on then, I think in last week, referencing things that you said we need to come up with a definition of, a structure. So how is structure different than a building? And maybe a building is a structure and it needs to cover,
A building is a structure. Structure is more of an overriding definition that
Very
covers,
broad.
it would cover something like a cell phone tower, propane tanks,
Building, any structure.
Chicken coop.
yeah.
Any-
Well, the chicken coop would be a building, because it, under this definition.
Be an accessory.
Would a structure be a stone wall?
Could very well be, yes. Technically, it would be.
It's handmade, right?
so if you have a piece of property and it has a stone wall through it, is it natural or is it man-made?
It's handmade.
Even if it was built 250 years ago?
It's man-made.
I'm just saying, because some places you can't tear them down.
Well, that's a designated historical thing.
Just entertaining how they are, I agree with they're man-made. That's actually the bottom line. But, so I guess we're probably okay because we do say any structure, should under building, should we go to the extent of saying any structure, comma, as defined in this ordinance, or should we just leave it alone?
You have to put a special.
Well, there is a definition for structure, there is already.
There is, okay, we get to it, okay. So nothing need to be changed?
Yeah, building is a particular structure designed for use as shelter and home for persons, animals, goods, property. Commercial, that would include commercial buildings, it would include the store down here. You can't call that a residence, so you need to cover it somewhere else.
So just leave it alone.
I think leave it alone.
Okay,
And the store here is a good example because they have an accessory building out back.
building front line. This probably has, I would guess, in shoreline somewhere. Okay, this building height thing, somebody told me fairly recently that there was some kind of a change in the shoreline zoning ordinance for building height and how they're gonna measure that, so we might have to take a look at that.
You want me to take that upon myself? to see
Yeah, if
I
you could
can
do that,
find
that'd be
out
great.
The changes in the shoreline zoning ordinance,
Yeah.
structures, principle.
Yeah, see how, yeah, somebody, I forget who told me that, they're,
Now, anything that I communicate that I find, I should send through Debbie and ask her to,
yeah, you can do it, you can, or you, yeah, you can send it
I better send it through Debbie,
through Debbie.
through the office.
So, okay, so the bulk oil and fuel tank storage. And then bureau, I think we should take that out, because inside the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, there's a bunch of different bureaus, and I'm not sure why this is only the Bureau of Forestry for this
I
bureau.
agree, I saw that today. Yeah. Why
I was wondering,
why
what the
one?
heck is it there for?
Yeah, I don't think it serves any value for us.
And there are all kinds of bureaus, why did they limit it just to that?
That's what I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Campground looks all right.
Code enforcement, commercial complex.
If you go back to canopy, there's more than tree canopies, I mean, there's canopies on buildings too.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Now, I do think I should check that, though, and maybe that might be tied to the shoreline zoning. But if it is tied to shoreline zoning, I don't think we really need to define it anyway, because it'll be a state definition for it.
Yeah, I don't know, you're probably right.
Right, but I mean, I'm agreeing with you, though, because what if somebody wants to come up and put a canopy in front of a building, and that needs to be, regulated, like, even if they're putting I don't know off the top of my head, I have to look it up, in the shoreline zoning ordinance, you put a canopy on your building, towards the water, does that count towards your setback? I don't know the answer to that question.
No, because it's not a permanent. It's just, as long as it's just a,
Summer thing?
well, like a rollout thing, but you can't put anything in the ground. You can't make any permanent in the ground, but you can, like, put a rollout.
Well, should we keep canopy in there as it's defined or not?
No.
Well, yeah, the only thing would be if it's needed for shoreline, but.
Because we're not going to define it different than the state defines it.
No.
Certificate of compliance. Could you do me a favor, just throughout these definitions, and just double check these MRSAs for all the definitions, and just make sure that in all the cases that the MRSA, that the state didn't renumber it or something like that. So like in the child care, I think there was automobile graveyards and stuff.
Yeah, get those.
If you can just go through just check and make sure, because sometimes they do renumber, and I just
We'll make sure.
don't want to have a wrong MRSA
So we got a
reference.
couple on 18.2 and one on 18.3, so
Yeah.
there's one down the bottom. Daycare facility.
So anything else on this page down to the bottom, daycare facility, that people can? I mean, these are all, I don't think we have anything that's quote unquote new until what we're proposing to push into this.
What are adult clubs going to come in there? Commercial indoor recreational?
I don't know, that's a good question.
I mean, it seems to-
Oh, yeah, you know what, I think it's in the back. If you go to the back, if you go to, it says definition specific to the adult business standard. has adult business and things like that, I mean, that's stuff that we were gonna pull into the definitions.
Alright.
Okay, that's on page 1820 for this. So,
I was just looking under commercial indoor recreational, if that would fall under there.
well, you know what, let's just quickly go to the back and look at the adult stuff on page 1820. Maybe we should make a caveat there. This is, well, hang on a second, think about it. If we made a caveat there that said not including adult businesses.
Under commercial indoor recreational, you mean?
Right. Okay, and then had it the other place, would it create a problem because we've already, I think we defined it, it can only go in that industrial zone anyway. I think that would,
Yeah.
So we would just add at the end, not to include adult entertainment.
right. Yeah, that's what I think.
Adult entertainment, what, venues, sites?
Adult
Businesses,
businesses.
commercial enterprise or something like that.
Not to include adult entertainment businesses.
Yeah.
Well, the thing at the bottom just says adult business, so you wouldn't want to add the word entertainment, just adult business.
Adult businesses, okay. Under outdoor,
Confusion.
yeah, you're right. Under outdoor use, I know it doesn't talk about, golf courses, tennis courts, amusement theme parks, water slides, zoos, animal parks, racetracks, speedways, motorcycle tracks. Then we just say, et cetera. And we do have amusement and theme parks. Do we want to write something in there like, you know, other things that, like for winter type sports, like free ski parks, or things like that? I mean, just to put in.
Winter recreation facilities?
Say that again?
Winter recreation
Yeah,
facilities?
yeah, that's a good, yeah, because that would include like, skating rinks and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can always add the term or similar.
I know, I was just looking at it, it just dawned on me that it really only covers summer stuff and not really, doesn't say anything about winter stuff, and I just want to make it clear that we're trying to encourage all that stuff.
Congregate housing looks all right.
And by the way, you've got dimensional requirements in here twice. This first one needs to come out.